Have you ever wondered if something about you was never really made for this world, that you were born different, not in a loud or obvious way, but quietly, almost secretly, like there was something just under your skin that didn't match the rhythm of the world around you? You laughed with others, played the same games, went through the motions, but deep down, you always felt like you were listening to a different song, one that no one else seemed to hear. Maybe you tried to ignore it. Maybe you tried to change, to blend in, to become whatever they needed you to be. But no matter how hard you tried, that feeling never fully went away. It whispered to you in quiet moments, in long stares out the window, in the silence between questions you didn't know how to ask. What if that feeling wasn't your imagination? What if that strange sense of difference was something real? What if you were already waking up long before you had words for what was happening? Have you ever looked back at your childhood and wondered why you were so different from the other children around you? Perhaps you felt things more deeply. Perhaps you saw things others didn't see. Perhaps you carried questions that none of your playmates seemed to ask. And perhaps you thought something was wrong with you, that you were broken somehow, that you didn't fit the mold everyone else seemed to slip into so easily. But what if I told you that those very things you thought made you strange were actually signs? Signs that you were already awakening, signs that your consciousness was stretching beyond the usual boundaries, like a seed cracking open beneath the soil, long before anyone sees the green shoot rise above ground. Let me share with you 5 signs from childhood that might prove you were already on this path, already sensing the music that most people never hear. You felt everything too deeply. Were you the child who cried when you saw a dead bird on the sidewalk? The one who couldn't watch certain movies because the sadness stayed with you for days? The one who felt the mood of a room the moment you walked into it, like stepping into water and instantly knowing whether it's warm or cold? Other children seemed to bounce along. They laughed. They played. They moved on. But you absorbed everything. A harsh word from a teacher didn't just sting. It lived in you. You replayed it. You felt it in your chest like a weight. When your parents argued, even if they thought you were asleep, you felt the tension like a vibration in the air. You couldn't explain it. You just knew. This wasn't weakness, though everyone might have told you to toughen up, to stop being so sensitive. This was actually your antenna, your instrument for picking up signals that others missed. The awakened soul doesn't build thick walls. It has thin membranes. And yes, this means you feel the pain more acutely, but it also means you feel the beauty more acutely. You feel the truth more acutely. Most people go through life with their receivers turned down low. They have to. Otherwise the noise would overwhelm them. But you came in with the volume turned up. You couldn't help it. That's how you were tuned. While it made childhood harder, it also meant you were learning to read life at a level most people never access. Think of it this way. A musician with perfect pitch hears every note, every slight variation. To someone without that gift, the song sounds fine either way, but the musician knows. They can't not hear it. You were born with something like perfect pitch for emotion, for energy, for the undercurrents of human experience. So if you were that sensitive child, the one who felt too much, understand this. You weren't defective. You were awake, or at least you were waking up. The world tried to teach you to shut down, to build walls, to stop feeling so much. But part of you refused. And that refusal, that insistence on staying open even when it hurt, that was the sign. You asked questions nobody else was asking. Do you remember sitting in church, or at the dinner table, or in school, and suddenly thinking, why are we doing it this way? Who decided this? What if we're wrong? Maybe you asked these questions out loud and got uncomfortable looks. Maybe adults told you to be quiet, to stop being difficult, to just accept things the way they are. Or maybe you learned quickly to keep the questions to yourself, to smile and nod while inside your mind was spinning with doubts and curiosities no one else seemed to have. Other children wanted to know how things worked. You wanted to know why they existed at all. Other children accepted the rules of the game. You wanted to know who made the rules and whether the rules made any sense. This wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. This was genuine wondering. You looked at the world, and it didn't quite add up. People said one thing and did another. They followed traditions without understanding them. They accepted suffering as normal. They chased things that seemed hollow. And you, even as a child, sensed something was off about all of it. The awakened soul is born with a kind of cosmic skepticism, not cynicism, skepticism, a willingness to question, to peek behind the curtain, to not take the surface story as the whole truth. Most people never develop this. They accept the script they are handed and read their lines until the curtain falls. But you couldn't. Something in you kept whispering, "There's more to this. Look closer. Don't believe everything you're told." Maybe you asked about death and what happens after. Maybe you asked about God and why people fight over God. Maybe you asked about fairness and why some have so much while others have nothing. Maybe you asked about the point of it all, the meaning, the reason we're here. These are not childish questions. These are the oldest questions, the deepest questions, the questions mystics and sages have wrestled with for thousands of years, and you were asking them at 8 years old. Why? Because your soul was already looking beyond the game. It was already sensing that the ordinary explanations weren't enough. You spent a lot of time alone and you liked it. Were you the child who wandered off to sit under a tree while the other kids played tag? The one who could spend hours in your room with your books, or your drawings, or just your thoughts? The one who didn't always need people around, who sometimes preferred the quiet company of yourself? It's not that you were antisocial. You could laugh, play, be part of the group, but something in you also craved solitude. You needed it like sleep. Too much noise, too much talking, too much surface chatter, and you started to feel scattered, lost, like you were forgetting something important. Other kids feared being alone. They needed distraction, validation, stimulation, but you went inward. You found something there in the silence that the noise couldn't give you. Maybe you called it imagination. Maybe you didn't call it anything at all. You just knew that when the world faded a little, something else emerged. A stillness, a presence, a sense that you were more than your name or body or story. You were already practicing what monks and mystics spend lifetimes learning, the art of being alone without being lonely, the art of stillness without boredom, the art of finding richness in silence. People may have worried about you, said you were too withdrawn, too much in your own world. But you weren't lost in your own world. You were found there. You were discovering that the most interesting part of life wasn't out there on the playground, or the shopping mall, or the television. It was in here, in the vast interior space of your own awareness. You saw through pretense and couldn't play along. Did you ever see adults lie and wonder why no one else noticed? Not big lies, small ones, social ones. Your mother smiling at a neighbor she just complained about. Your father pretending to like his boss. Your teacher praising a student she clearly didn't care for. Other kids didn't notice, but you did. You saw the mask and the face beneath it, and it bothered you. It felt wrong. Like everyone was playing a game and pretending the game was real life. Maybe you pointed it out once or twice. But, Mom, I thought you said you didn't like her. And you got the look that said, hush, we don't talk about these things. This is how the world works. But something in you resisted. You couldn't fake it. At parties, you stood there, awkward, unable to make small talk that felt hollow. At family gatherings, you felt like an observer, like everyone was performing and you were watching from behind the curtain. You were supposed to play a part. But when you did, it felt exhausting, like wearing clothes that didn't fit. The awakened soul has a very low tolerance for pretense. It sees the theater, and it can't unsee it. And once you see it, really see it, you can't go back. You felt homesick for a place you couldn't name. This is perhaps the strangest sign. And yet, the one so many awakened souls instantly recognize. Did you ever feel a kind of longing, not for a person, not for a place, but for something you couldn't name, like you were far from home even when you were in your own house? A subtle sadness, a gentle ache, a homesickness for somewhere you've never been, at least not in this life. You looked at the stars and felt it. You sat by water and it washed over you. You were surrounded by people and still felt it. That feeling, it wasn't depression. It was memory, spiritual memory. The soul remembering its source, remembering that all of this is only part of the story. You didn't just want more out of life. You remembered there was more. And that ache, that longing, it never fully went away, because it wasn't meant to. It's not a wound. It's a compass, pointing you back to yourself. So what does it all mean? If you felt too deeply, if you asked questions no one else asked, if you craved solitude, if you saw through pretense, if you longed for a home you couldn't name, then you weren't strange. You were already waking up. Your childhood wasn't broken. It was sacred. Your strangeness wasn't a flaw. It was an invitation to be real, to stay open, to stay awake. And the world, it needs you. Not to fix it, not to save it, but simply to be what you are, to feel, to wonder, to be still, to see clearly, to remember home, because when you live awake, you remind others that they can too. You've been doing this since you were a child. Now, maybe it's time to stop pretending you're asleep.